So we've got Stephanie Sims back at it again with the white vans. So thanks, Stephanie, for coming back and making this a series for us. I was excited when she sent me a couple of topics that she thought would be good for this group. And I was like, yeah, let's do both of those. And so she has kindly acquiesced to my request. So Stephanie, if you don't mind just jumping in, I'll let you share your screen if you want to, and give everybody your background just briefly, and then educate us.
Well, thanks, Taylor. It's a pleasure to be here, as long as it's not too much Stephanie, because this is the second week in a row. But yeah, I'm excited to chat with you guys today about what I call the $1 million question. But before we dive in, for those that I didn't get a chance to meet last week, my name is Stephanie Sims, and I am the founder of Financeability, and I help entrepreneurs tell economic stories that make dollars and cents. I can help you find money for your company. I can help you navigate saving the runway that you've already got. Or if, like Michael, you're towards the end of your entrepreneurial journey in this particular iteration and you're looking to sell, I have also been able to help folks maximize that opportunity for themselves by really learning how to talk about your business as an investment. And part of what we're going to talk about today is the way to be better at talking about your business as an investment is to actually be a good investor in your business. And so when Taylor asked me to come and chat about the $1 million question, I know it sounds really sexy, but it's a pretty simple question. It's, if you had $1 million, what's the first thing you would do in your business? And when I talk to entrepreneurs, quite often they are very frustrated because they've been trying to raise capital and they haven't had the success they would like. It's a painful process. There's a lot of rejection. They are hearing conflicting opinions from two people in the same day and don't really know what to do. And sometimes asking yourself the question of, if I had the money, what would my plan be, can be incredibly clarifying for two reasons. First off, because sometimes it can help you recognize that money is not really getting in your way, that there are other things you could be doing right now that could move your business forward, instead of being having this tunnel vision around the fact that the only way to succeed is to raise capital. But then the second piece is that as you start to look at this, if I had this magical pot of $1 million, you can start to unwind some misconceptions or some myths that are going on in your own head about what raising capital really means to you. And I have had people who have gone through this exercise and have realized that they were raising capital because someone told them they should, because that was what they were supposed to do at that stage of their business, or because they didn't actually know what to do next. But raising capital sounded like a good idea because if they got some money, then they had more freedom and more space to figure it out. Now, I am all for you having clarity and space to figure things out, but I would hate for you to go through a fundraising process and sell off part of the equity of your business to be able to get that for yourself. And so what I would encourage you to do is to do this exercise for yourself. If you think that money is getting in your way, suspend your disbelief and ask yourself the question, if I had all the money I think I need to grow my business, what is my exact plan for growing the business? Now, it doesn't mean you need to account for it down to the penny. Let's not be ridiculous. But it does mean that you need to understand something more than, I'm going to hire 5 people in sales and somehow miraculously they're going to bring me 100 customers. Because those two pieces don't go together in the way that you think they do, right? Money is not a miracle worker. It's not going to solve all the problems in your business. You still have to know where to invest it to get the most value from it. And I can't remember, it's a quote, I think it's from an Ayn Rand novel, and I always mess it up, but money is only a tool, right? It's never going to replace you as the driver and the decider in your business. And so even if it's hard to suspend your disbelief, I would encourage you to say to yourself, great, I just won the lottery. And this money is suddenly miraculously available to me. What is the first thing I'm going to do? And not just hire someone to do the crappy parts of my business that I don't like to do. Because I get that, and I've been there. I am sometimes living there, even though I do have a team that helps me, that's not necessarily going to move your business forward. When you're thinking about the things that you're going to do, I would challenge you to pair them with a measure of success. So if you're going to hire a VA, let's say, what is that VA going to give you in terms of return for your business? Are they going to give you back some time? And if they're going to give you back some time, then how are you going to leverage that time to grow your business? Right? So maybe an investment in a virtual assistant is going to enable you to do another 2 sales calls a day or a week or whatever it may be. But start to really train your brain to think about not just, hey, I need this big pile of money so I can spend it, but I need this big pile of money so that I can invest it in my business. And I want to be very judicious in the way that I'm investing. And as you lay out that plan, if you start to look at things on your plan and you're like, well, I don't really know how I'd measure success for that, then maybe that's something that needs to go in the to be explored column instead of the let's raise money for this column, right? And one of the cool things about this is once you get that kind of to be explored column going, you can start to run little tiny experiments that can help you understand what you might learn from that particular thing. And so instead of going out and raising a bunch of money to try to do something that you're not actually sure is going to result in the things you think it will, you can use this process to clarify what you're really raising the money for and where you might need to do more experiments before you raise capital for those particular activities. Now, the one other thing, I know this can feel overwhelming because it's like, oh my gosh, sit down and list everything in my business that I would do. A framework that you can use to think about this is what I call the Finsights method. And it means that there's really only 4 things you have to do in your business. Every business, whether you're product, service, SaaS, biotech, whatever you are, you only have to do 4 things. First thing you have to do is you have to attract buyers. So when you start to kind of break down your activities, what you would do with this money, break one section down into how would I attract buyers? The next thing you have to do is you have to deliver your solution. And this is a place where a lot of people neglect how much money or time they're going to have to invest to do this. But sit down and make a list of all the activities you're going to do that enable you to deliver your solution. And this is where things can get really interesting because then you have to start thinking about, well, at scale, how do I onboard people? How do I make sure I get paid? How do I make sure that they all have access to the solution if they all try to use it at the same time? So this can be a really interesting exercise for you too. Once you've understood how you attract buyers and how you deliver your solution, you've got to think about how you delight those clients so that if you're a recurring revenue model, they continue to buy from you. If you're a transaction model, they make a decision to buy from you again. And if you're neither of those, you find a way to get them to refer or to provide a testimonial so that you can actually attract new clients at a lower cost. So attract, deliver, delight. Once you've done those 3, then you want to think about building new offers. And in building new offers, this can mean 2 things. This can mean if you have a product, you might include new features in it that would increase the value to your current customers so that you could sell more to them. Or you might think about taking the product that you already have and moving it into a new market, which may require you to rework your value proposition and hopefully not change your pricing too much, but probably change your messaging and change the way that you're doing customer acquisition. So instead of getting overwhelmed and thinking, oh my gosh, I have all these things to do, break your business down into 4 quadrants. So attract, deliver, delight, and build. And then start to think about each of the things you're going to do. And once you see that list, this can be really enlightening because I've done this exercise with quite a few people. A lot of people have a bunch of stuff in one list and have like 2 lines in every other list. And it's not that it's not realistic, but you might rethink how much focus in terms of time and energy, as well as money, you're putting on just one quadrant of your business, because for your business to be scalable and profitable, you really need to be devoting consistent, even if it's not equal, time and energy to all 4 quadrants of your business. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a framework that helps you answer the $1,000,000 question, so that you can be confident that you're actually asking for money for things that you know you can execute on, as opposed to asking for money that's trying to buy you time and clarity around what to do next. So any questions, comments, thoughts? You've tried this, it doesn't work at all, you hate it.
Stephanie, I want you to just start using some of the people's companies in this group right now as case studies and see where they are in all 4 of those quadrants.
Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but I'm happy to play along.
Well, I think with your questions, I mean, it would be interesting. I'm just looking at the faces on here. Yeah, Casey's raising his hand. Like, what questions do you have, Casey?
Well, I was volunteering to be like a case study, like ask me how I'm doing on those things.
So Casey, how much of your time and energy is spent on each of those 4 quadrants?
Seems like all of it, and I agree with you. I have lists of things to do, and I'm a bit scattered on some things too. So can you name those 4 quadrants again? I like the terms you had, and I want to be sure to remember those.
I just threw them in the chat, Casey. Did I get those right, Stephanie?
I'll have a look, but basically it's attract, deliver, delight, and build.
Okay. So,
and yes, Taylor, you got them right.
So for attract, we've been on social media, and we got some product reviews on YouTube, and that definitely attracted customers, mostly off the YouTube stuff. So we've got that connection and seen that, like, we have a product that customers want. Delivering has been a challenge. Right now I'm in the middle of being sold out, and working on some supply chain issues.
And you have a product, right? And maybe tell,
yeah.
I heard about it in the breakout, but maybe tell everybody else what your product is.
It's a near-ear audio system that mounts on mountain bike helmets, and that provides you so you can hear everything around you and then add your music in. So you're not actually detracting from your experience at all, and you're able to maintain your situational awareness and have respect for other people on the trail too.
Is it bone conduction, Casey? Do you do that through bone conduction?
It's not bone conduction. So it becomes part of your helmet basically, and just puts a speaker right above your ear in a nice little sweet spot. And so it acts more like background music to you. It's nice because it's got a long battery life, and you put on your helmet and go.
Awesome.
The next pillar was attract.
Delight.
Delight.
So once you've delivered, then you need to delight.
Yep.
Talk to me about repeat customers, customer service.
So that's a challenge. Like, we've got kind of a one-off product. So we're actually looking to expand our market segment, and that was kind of the plan anyway. A little sooner than I was anticipating, but we've decided, because I just saw a lot of our customers that we were attracting were actually what the next segment will be, and we're going to go into like the full-faced helmet type of application for a little more rowdy mountain biking, and also that bridges us right into the snow sports and just the snow sports area too, where we can have something that's made more for like inside of a helmet type of thing, and then bring our same technology along with us to, that we're not going to block your ear. And then we're actually looking at some active environmental awareness type of technology to integrate in here too. So that's kind of our 4th one, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I love the way that you're kind of connecting the dots between, okay, I attracted some people that I couldn't serve right now, but I listened to what they said, and that's how I'm building my next offer.
Yeah.
Right. Because you've kind of pre-validated the demand for that next offer.
Yeah.
Just one thing I would put in your ear, see what I did there. K2 used to make, I'm not sure they still do it, but K2 used to make a helmet, a ski helmet that had the pad, like the loopholes for the chin strap that had speakers in it. I
Right.
actually have one. So.
Oh, cool.
So I don't know, you might just look at that just to see kind of, you might be in a different competitive set once you move into that market.
Yeah, for sure. And we're trying to carry our messaging differently throughout this whole thing, because we're not just selling another audio piece of equipment. We're selling the experience of like optimizing your outdoor activities so that you can have like your equipment just dialed in, so it's not a concern for you, so you can actually like pay attention to the things that matter, like your safety. You know, you don't want to get hurt because you couldn't hear something. That'd be kind of dumb, I guess. I don't know, for lack of a
Right. Well, it would, right?
You know, you're out there like mountain biking and skiing and snowboarding and all these sports, they're dangerous. Like you want to be on point. You got to have the right gear. I just taught myself a lesson this last weekend actually about that, about not maintaining my bike. So I'm my own customer.
Well, so I guess I love that you described how those things all flow together, and you'll notice that there was kind of a virtuous cycle there, right? Which is the concept, right? So, okay, great. I learn more at each step so that then by the time I get ready to build something new, I actually may have pre-validated it, which I love that you've done. I have to ask you the $1 million question. If you had $1 million, what quadrant maybe would get most of the money to start with?
Oh, I'd do a 50-50 split on it. I'd do supply chain and marketing.
Okay, so attraction and delivery.
Yes.
Okay. And do you feel like you have either some experiments that you have queued up that you could run, or some specific things you're doing in your business that you know you could invest that money in right away to either scale faster, to bring costs down, or to get more clients?
Yeah, like for example, like I'm hesitant right now on doing things because I don't have the capital to invest. And one of those is actually like getting product into hands of product reviewers. Like we had instant success with that. I mean, it had its moment and it's kind of trickled off, but like that model works for our product line. Even though our product review wasn't that great, it really got people thinking about it. And I've had people contact me direct email like, hey, I've been looking for this product for years. I want something just like this. You're speaking my language. And that's where I get that validation. And we've actually had, like, I've had some product returns too. And to really like evaluate and have a real discussion with those people has been very helpful for me to realize, what do I need to do in the next one? And furthermore, who can I call? Like when we're getting ready to do that, who can I call on for support? Like I've got allies now that don't even have my product. They return my product and they're like telling me, thank you so much for being an awesome company, while they're returning my product. And I'm like, wow.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I was like, that sounds really cool. Like I need to just like really makes me want to push a little bit harder even.
I think that's awesome. And to me, that's a great example of creating a nice feedback loop, right? In that sort of delight quadrant. Okay, great. So I hear from somebody who maybe wasn't happy with the product, but I still continue to connect with them. I try to understand what happened. And I think that's really smart.
I think delight is super rewarding and important.
Well, and it's a great feeding ground for knowing what you need to build next, right? Because you can hear people who were disappointed. They were like, it was close, but it was just off the mark. Here's what I want for it to be perfect for me.
Yeah.
Right. And if there's enough of them out there, then you go and build it. One other question I have for you is, when you did your kind of influencer marketing or your product review campaign, do you have a way to maybe quantify what the return on that investment was? Like, how much did it cost you to do it? And here I would count your time and energy, not just the money that you spent to send the product for free.
Yeah.
And then I would look at how many sales, if you can trace how many sales you got out of that, that can be a really powerful metric, so that you can start to understand, even as you continue to do it, if it's not working as well as it should, or as well as it has in the past.
So Stephanie, you're asking questions that I'm interested in as you drill down on each one of the 4 quadrants. Do you have specific questions for each quadrant when you're doing an audit like this? I mean, some of them that I've heard were like, what are your success metrics for each one of the quadrants? Are there additional questions that we should be thinking about as we do this quadrant audit? I'll call it. I just don't know if there's a real name for it, but are there specific questions under each one of those that you would suggest we ask ourselves?
So I think it's great. I'm glad it's useful. Thank you, Taylor. I don't know that you need specific questions for each quadrant. I would think more in terms of kind of what I did with Casey there at the end, which is, okay, great. Once I know all the things I'm doing, what are, no, Jeff, you can't have it. I'm going to trademark it, but I like it. It's good.
Jeff's your new IP attorney now, Stephanie.
Oh, perfect. Well, we'll talk after. We'll talk after. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. So once you list out all the things you're doing in the quadrant, right? So you told us, Casey, you told us a couple of things, right? So you're doing this kind of influencer marketing campaign, and then you talked about a YouTube. Now, I don't know if those are both the same thing, but kind of, were they mixed together?
Yeah, it's hard to, I'm not good enough in that sector to be able to separate them.
Well, that's okay, because if that's kind of, you're thinking about it as a block, then that's okay. The goal is, I identified this thing that I did. I identified how much money and time, because time is your most precious resource as an entrepreneur, I put into it. And then I looked at what my success was. And just, so you're following along, the investment divided by the success is your return on investment.
Okay.
Right? So you're already thinking like an investor just by using these kind of elements. And you can start to make good decisions because, like I said, if you have another couple of things you try and you're like, I get 2 sales for every product review I get, and I get 0.5 sales for every Facebook ad I run. Well, ride the product review horse until it doesn't go anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Now, as you start to scale your business, you're not going to be able to just have one attraction method, clearly, but stick with the thing that's working the best, and then continue experimenting with other things that help you get something else that supports that investment in a way that's meaningful. Right?
Okay.
And just by shifting that mindset away from, look, I just spent this money and I'm not really sure what happened, to I invested this money and here's what I expect to happen. That already can really set you apart with investors, which is interesting, but frankly, it can set you apart in building a much more profitable and scalable business, which, whether you take investors or not, is the name of the game.
Yeah, I think that'll help me my initial reaction is it feels like that'll help me manage my time a little better too. To really put the effort into where the return is, and to be able to find out where the return is, because a lot of it is like kind of guesswork.
Well, and this is
feels like it.
And it does. And that's entrepreneurship, right? Nobody has a crystal ball. But to me, that's where it starts to get really interesting. Everybody can layer in cost, right? Everybody can go look at how much they spend on Facebook ads or the cost of a product that they sent to a product reviewer. Time, to me, is the really interesting thing, because if to get the product review, it took you a week, then the cost of that product review is a whole lot more than just the product that you gave away for free. Because you could have done a lot of other things with those 40 hours or 80 hours if you're working like an entrepreneur. Right? So sometimes you can put those two things kind of in two separate, and of course I think in spreadsheets, so in two separate lists or in two separate columns. So you can see, yeah, it's cheap in terms of dollars out the door, but it's very expensive in terms of time.
Awesome advice. Thank you very much.
Oh, of course, my pleasure.
Analysis of where I'm at too.
Cool. I will say one other thing, if you really want to get more quantitative about it, I would encourage you to create an hourly rate for yourself. And then I would apply, like when you do this time calculation, when you calculate your investment, I would take the time you spend and I would multiply it by your hourly rate so you can see what you really invested in that particular thing. Because that can be very eye-opening as well when you start to realize, yeah. Oh wow, I just spent $1,000 to refine an email drip campaign. Was that really a good use of that $1,000? Even though it was just my time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to, that'll maybe help me get out of that mindset of like, hey, I could do this for just time.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing. And the other thing to start thinking about, which is, again, how you're going to move to scaling the business, is you have to be able to give that stuff away. And so the sooner you know the low value things that need to be done, the sooner you can start to package them up and bring in somebody who can learn from you and do them in a different way. Right? So it helps you kind of get on the road to scaling too, because you're starting to understand, hey, here's what needs my attention. And here's where I'm not really adding a lot of value. We could bring in somebody else to do this.
Cool.
Awesome. Sorry, I've been talking a long time, but I get excited about this stuff.
Well, you are the speaker, so.
Well, there's that.
Who else has questions that you'd like to throw at Stephanie? Just unmute yourself.
Stephanie, I think it's not really a question, but it's something that I realized when I took a Goldman Sachs business class. But they really said, okay, if you had $50,000, what would you invest in your business? And so you start thinking, you're like, oh, okay, I'll do this and this. Okay, if you had $500,000, what would you invest in? And you start thinking a little bit big and like, wow, if you had $5 million, what would you invest in? And it just really puts that thinking cap on that. How could you grow your business if you were to think big? And don't think, great, I'm going to grow by 10% by doing 10% more work. I'm going to grow by 100% by hiring this amount of people, or invest in this equipment, or whatever it is.
Right. I love that, Spencer. And I think it's also another way to think about that. If the money part freaks you out, because some people, when they start thinking about taking $5 million, like it kind of gives them anxiety, which is normal, right? You know, it's a lot of money. Sometimes if that makes you nervous, think about where your business is now, what it would take to be 10 times as successful, whether that's by users or revenue. And then what would it take to be 100 times as successful, whether that's by users or revenue. And you can start to plot out in your brain, okay, great. So I have 100 users today. What would it look like if I had 1,000 users? What would it look like if I had 10,000 users? And when you start to think in that way, sometimes to Spencer's point, it can unblock this thinking of, well, the only way to do this is for me to do it myself, or the only way to do this is, piece by piece, because maybe there's some kind of interesting economies of scale that you can get to as you start to move into a larger number of users, and you can do things in a different way.
Stephanie, do you ever suggest to your clients to run mini tests, like saying, yeah, if you had 1 million, great, but can you show that you'll get success if you spent $1,000 on the activity you're asking for 1 million? Or does that scale not typically work in your experience? Like for Casey, yeah, spend $1,000 on influencer marketing so that you can show an investor that if you spent 1 million, there is room there.
You have to be careful, right? Because there are diminishing returns, particularly in that attraction quadrant. Like what works at a small scale doesn't necessarily work at a large scale because you can saturate your audience. And so some of that is also understanding the size of your target market. And if you're looking at investor pitches like TAM, SAM, and SOM, right? Understanding how big your market can really be, both in terms of dollar value, but also in terms of people. And I would start to kind of make your plan and then say, oh, okay, but if I invested $1 million annually, that would mean I was hitting 200,000 people. And I know my target market is only 500,000 people, right? So I know that there's no way that those two things can really work without me coming off as being annoying or, turning people off to my product because that's all they see.
Yeah.
And so I think it's more of like a fail safe that you want to do. I think the exercise is interesting, but I think you want to kind of put a fail safe on it by looking at the size of your market to see if it's reasonable. The other piece that I've seen this help with, particularly in the attraction quadrant, is getting better at refining your target customer, right? Because a lot of times when we start out, we have a much broader sense of who our ideal client is. And as you do these experiments and you start to see what really resonates, and I think Casey, you mentioned it, right? Like someone comes to you and is like, you are speaking my language, and you can start to identify who those folks are, but there may not be millions of them. There may be hundreds of thousands of them. And you may have to actually build a new offer to get to another pool of people that is hundreds of thousands who like something, but are looking for it in a different way. Does that make sense? Doesn't mean you can't get to a really big market, but it just means you're not going to get there using the exact same tool every time.
Cool.
Does that help, Taylor?
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, I was just thinking about like Spencer talked to the group. Spencer Arnson's talked to the group a little while ago about a test that I think he was running, and it seemed like, yeah, you spend $1,000, Spencer, and you saw, and you just posted on Facebook or something, and you saw a lot of people saying, yeah, I'm interested. Okay, does that allow you or warrant now going out and saying, okay, I want to spend 100 grand on marketing to see if I can get 100x the customers? So that was just where my my thinking was, is just kind of the examples that we've had in the past here.
Well, and I think it's also about the way that you choose to scale, right? I mean, I don't think that anyone would go from spending 1,000 in a month to spending 100,000 in a month, right? We'd all want to kind of test the waters and perhaps make incremental increases in those investments. And if you're looking at it from the ROI perspective, you can start to say, okay, great. So I invested twice as much, say 2,000 this month. Okay, I'm still getting the same return on that investment, right? I'm still getting 2 sales for every $1,000 I spend. And you keep going until you hit a point where you're like, oh no, after I hit $10,000 a month, it's not working anymore, right? And that's normal, right? Like every tactic we use is not going to work at every level, but that's when having those other pieces that you've experimented with to put into the mix, you can keep investing the 10,000 there, but then you start taking some of that money and you invest it in other things that get you a decent return on that investment as well. Does that make sense? So don't feel like you just have one tool in your toolbox. I did say you have to kind of ride that horse until it stops running, but that doesn't mean that that's the only horse you've got, if that helps.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So I think we're over our typical time of 11:45, but I also like to keep the conversation going. If anybody would like to stick around and ask Stephanie some more questions for the next 12 minutes. But otherwise, thanks for joining, and we'll be back next Tuesday. But Stephanie, are you good to answer any more questions from the group, if there are any?
Yeah, I can hang around for another few minutes. I do have to bolt at like 5 till, so I got another, say, whatever that is, 10 minutes, 8 minutes. But I'm happy to hang around, and then if we do have other questions, happy to take them. Yep.
Okay.
Glad it was useful. Thank you, everybody who's chiming in the chat. And of course, if you have questions, don't hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to try to provide whatever resources I can if that will help you.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie.
You bet.
Anybody still in the room want to throw some questions at Stephanie?
I'm going to go trademark my quadrant audit then before Jeff gets to it.
Right? I know. I like that. I like that activity, though. I mean, going through and saying, okay, how do you break this down? I think that's super helpful. So it's in my notes. I'm going to send it out to everybody on the list. Stephanie, is there anything else, any other resources or any links that you would like me to include in what I send out to the group in my notes?
I actually put together a little, it's ugly, but if people don't mind it being ugly, I put together a little document that's kind of a walkthrough, which I'm happy to share with you. I will also tell you that exercise we just did is the basis for creating a financial model. So like, if you're intimidated at all by building a financial model, you're like, oh my God, I can't do it. It's not possible. If you can do what Casey just did and write it down on paper, you can do it. You can build a financial model. Love it.
Yeah, if you don't mind sending me the amazing looking document.
It's so ugly, but I'll get my team to work on it later. But you guys will hopefully be happy just to see the content, and then when we get an updated one, we'll send it through.
Okay, send us the duct tape and baling twine, and really appreciate your time, Stephanie. This is awesome.
Yeah, of course, it's my pleasure, and I'm glad it was useful. And you know, anything that I can do to help you guys, please let me know, because when we all understand our numbers better, when we're all better investors in our own businesses, then we have the choice to raise capital if we want, but ultimately it helps everyone, right? Rising tide lifts all ships. So
cool.